It started the morning of our anniversary. Not just any day either, this was supposed to mark 10 years. A decade. I'd planned everything down to the minute. The reservations, the speech, the little gift I kept hidden in the glove box for the right moment. Kimberly had always said I was overly sentimental when it came to dates, but this one mattered. It was supposed to be different. Full circle. And maybe it was. Just not in the way I'd imagined. I was standing at the ironing board in our bedroom trying to smooth out the wrinkles on the blue button-down she said brought out my eyes. She'd always had a thing for that shirt. Said it made me look like the guy she first fell for. I was halfway through pressing the sleeves when I remembered my cufflinks, silver with a tiny engraving of our initials. A gift from her on our 5th anniversary. I hadn't worn them in months, but today felt right. I crossed the room and opened the top drawer of the dresser, her drawer, technically. Half her things, a few of mine. Neatly arranged perfume bottles, some makeup brushes, old receipts, and a velvet-lined box where I kept the cufflinks. But something else was in there too. A small, folded piece of white paper wedged under her brush. At first, I thought it was a receipt or a note from her to-do list. Kimberly scribbled reminders to herself constantly on napkins, in notebooks, on the bathroom mirror once when she didn't want to forget to pick up milk. But this didn't look like one of those. It was too clean. Folded once, sharply. Intentionally. Curiosity got the better of me. I unfolded it. Just one line, in thick, slanted black ink. Thanks for the night. You're like a Dr*G. That was it? No name. No signature. Just those words. I read it 3 times. My stomach dropped somewhere around the second. My first instinct was denial. Maybe it was old. Maybe it wasn't even hers. Maybe it was a joke. I wanted it to be a joke. But I knew her handwriting. This wasn't it. And it sure as hell wasn't mine. The paper trembled in my hand and I realized it wasn't the paper, it was me. My hand was shaking. The room felt colder suddenly, like a draft had crept in through the walls. My thoughts, once laser-focused on ironing and getting out the door on time, were now spiraling. Who had written this? And why was it in her drawer? The phrase, "You're like a Dr*G," echoed in my head. Who even writes that? It was an asterisk, mate. Obsessive. Dangerous in the way things become when people stop thinking with their heads. I stood there for what felt like hours, staring at the note like it would somehow rewrite itself if I looked long enough. But it didn't. It stayed the same. Black ink. White paper. A message meant for someone who wasn't me. That's when I heard the bathroom door open. Kimberly's footsteps padded softly across the hardwood floor. She was humming something light, upbeat. She had no idea I'd seen it. She entered the room, towel wrapped around her hair, wearing the same maroon robe she'd had since college. The sight of her, so familiar, so normal, made the whole thing even harder to comprehend. Then she saw the note in my hand. And she froze. It was subtle. Just for a second. But I caught it. Her eyes widened, just barely, before narrowing again, her expression shifting into something light, amused. Practiced. Oh, she said, smiling like she just caught me peeking at a surprise gift. You found that? I didn't answer. I just kept looking at her. She walked over, still smiling, and reached for the note. I didn't let go. What is it? I asked, my voice even. Too even. She glanced at the paper again and let out a small laugh. Oh, that's just a dumb note from one of the girls at training. You know, those weekend seminars my company does? It was a joke. We all got fake little love letters from a pretend secret admirer. Kind of a weird icebreaker thing. Silly, right? She smiled again, wider this time. Like a toothpaste commercial. Like a mask. I said nothing. Just nodded slowly. She kept her eyes on mine for a beat too long. That look women give when they're trying to figure out exactly how much you know. Not how much to tell you, but how much they need to. Her hand slipped gently onto my arm. Let's not let some stupid joke ruin today, she said, her voice sweet and soft. Come on, we've got to leave soon if we're going to make it to the ranch before dinner. Your mom's already texting me about the wine. She kissed me lightly on the cheek, too lightly, and stepped away to grab her bag. I still hadn't moved. I just stood there, cufflinks forgotten, iron forgotten, the weight of that tiny note burning in my hand. I'll go ahead and help set up, she called out, slinging her purse over her shoulder. You take your time. You look handsome already, babe. And just like that, she was gone. I stood there for several minutes after the door shut. The silence of the house pressed in on me, broken only by the ticking of the hallway clock. I looked down at the note again. Folded it slowly. Set it on the dresser. I sat down on the edge of the bed, staring at the space where her robe had hung that morning. My chest felt tight, like I'd swallowed something I couldn't get down. She hadn't flinched when she saw the note. She hadn't asked where I found it. She hadn't been confused. Only ready. That's what haunted me the most. She had a story lined up, practiced, ready to go, and I had no idea how long she'd been preparing it. The drive to the ranch was only 35 minutes, but it felt like hours. I kept the windows down even though it was too cold for that. I needed the air, needed something to distract from the thought ricocheting inside my head. She lied. That smile, that casual deflection, the way she kissed me like a chore, all of it was scripted. Performed. I gripped the steering wheel tighter than I needed to, knuckles white against the leather. Every bump in the road felt like it jostled something loose inside me. Something I'd been holding onto for too long. Because if I was being honest with myself, which I hadn't been until now, the signs were always there. Little things. Things I brushed off, told myself weren't worth fighting about. Told myself were probably my fault. But when you pull back far enough, they start to connect. They stop being isolated quirks and start forming a pattern. It started with the phone. At some point, I couldn't even tell you when, Kimberly began carrying it everywhere. I don't mean just in her purse or pocket, I mean everywhere. Bathroom. Bedroom. Laundry room. Once, I caught her taking it with her to the shower, wrapped in a towel like it needed to stay warm. When I asked, she just shrugged. Habit, she said. I listen to music while I shower. Except I never heard music. She also started locking her screen. That was new. We never had secrets. I knew her passcode. Then one day, it didn't work anymore. She changed it. Said it was because of some new work policy. IT's cracking down, she joked, sipping her coffee. I nodded. Believed her. Because that's what you do when you trust someone. Then there were the training programs. She suddenly had them every few weeks. Always somewhere just far enough away that it made sense to stay overnight. Always with a full itinerary. Always with just enough detail to sound legit, but never too much. Never the kind of detail that you can verify without sounding paranoid. She used to be afraid of traveling alone. Hated hotels. Now she packed like a pro. Lingerie I hadn't seen before, perfume she only used when we used to go away together. I remember one trip in particular, Bozeman, for some kind of leadership seminar. She came back with a tan, a new necklace, and this strange detachment, like she had unplugged from our life and plugged into something else. I learned so much, she said. Stuff I didn't even know I needed. I smiled. Told her I was proud of her. But she didn't meet my eyes. Then came the horses. Kimberly had always said horses freaked her out. Too big, she once said. Like standing next to a freight train. And yet, out of nowhere, she joined a riding club. Said it helped her clear her head. I thought it was great. A new hobby, something for her. She came back flushed and glowing from those lessons. I thought it was just exercise. I didn't think to ask who the instructor was. I didn't wonder why she started wearing makeup to go to the stables. I didn't ask. Because I didn't want to know the answer. And then there was us. We used to be tactile. Even when we argued, we'd find ways back to each other, accidental brushes, a hand on the back, a touch on the thigh in the car. It wasn't always fire, but it was warmth. That was gone. She stopped initiating anything. Hugs turned into side taps. Kisses landed on my cheek like mail. I started to feel like a roommate she barely tolerated. And every time I tried to reach out, take her hand during a movie, pull her closer in bed, she pulled away. Said she was tired. Said she didn't feel well. At some point, she stopped even pretending. I remember one night lying next to her, staring at the ceiling while she scrolled on her phone. I asked her what she was reading. She said, just news. Her thumb kept scrolling. I leaned in and asked, you happy? She looked at me startled like I'd just asked her for a loan. Of course, she said with a forced smile. Why wouldn't I be? And I believed her. God, I believed her. I kept telling myself it was just a phase. Stress. Work. Seasonal blues. I didn't want to be that guy, the jealous husband, the paranoid one. I prided myself on being calm, grounded. The kind of partner who gives space, who trusts. But now, with that note burning a hole in my jacket pocket, I realized something painful. I didn't trust her anymore. Worse, I had, and she'd *p***nized that trust. Used it to disappear behind training weekends and silent phones. And I had made it so damn easy for her. I'd ignored the empty bed, the dry kisses, the perfume that wasn't mine. I'd chosen denial because it was easier than admitting I'd already lost her. The worst part? I wasn't even angry. Not yet. Just hollow. Like a balloon that had been slowly leaking for months and now finally was empty. As the ranch came into view, rows of long tables set up on the gravel, string lights already swaying in the wind, I felt a new kind of dread settle over me. I was walking into a celebration, but I didn't feel like celebrating. Not anymore. And as much as I wanted to believe the evening could be salvaged, that maybe Kimberly would take my hand and remind me this was all some giant misunderstanding, I knew better. The note was just the tip of it. The final thread. Everything else had been unraveling for a long time. I just refused to see it. Yeah? I couldn't unsee it if I tried. By the time I pulled into the gravel driveway at the ranch, the sun was already starting to set behind the hills. The sky had that late evening amber glow, the kind that usually makes everything feel warmer, calmer. But it didn't touch me. The parking lot was full. I recognized every car. Her parents, her sister Lauren and her husband. My mom's minivan parked crooked like always. It was supposed to be a celebration, our 10th anniversary, a family dinner. A night to toast love that lasts. I led the engine but didn't get out. I sat in the car with my hands on the wheel, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I checked my reflection in the mirror. My collar was straight. My eyes were tired. And I looked like a man who had just figured out his entire world might be a lie. I shoved the note deeper into my jacket pocket and stepped out of the car. The patio lights were already on. The long wooden table, set under a lattice of string lights and surrounded by folding chairs, was almost full. Platters of food lined the center. People were laughing, passing bowls, raising glasses. I scanned the crowd. She wasn't there. That somehow made it worse. I wasn't ready to see her, but I also wasn't ready for her absence to feel this loud. My mom saw me first and waved me over. "There you are," she said, cheerful and unaware. "We were about to start without you." I put on a smile that felt borrowed. Forced a laugh. Sat down at the far end, next to Lauren's husband, who was too busy slicing into a steak to notice I wasn't okay. I barely heard the small talk around me. Just noise. Silverware clinking. Someone's giggling over spilled juice. My hands rested on the table, fingers twitching like they were waiting for something to hold onto. And then it happened. From the corner of my eye, I saw a figure appear at the edge of the patio. Kimberly. She was wearing a navy dress I didn't recognize. Tight. Elegant. Too elegant for a family dinner at a ranch. Her hair was curled, her lips painted that bold shade of red she usually reserved for New Year's or work galas. But that wasn't what hit me. It was him. Justin. Walking beside her like he belonged. One hand on her lower back, fingers splayed possessively. She didn't flinch. Didn't shrug him off. They moved like they had practiced it, choreographed it, arriving together as one. My chest felt like it caved in on itself. The noise around me faded to a dull hum. Everything slowed down. Kimberly's eyes scanned the table as she approached, and when she saw me, she hesitated for only a breath. A flicker. Then the smile returned, polished, plastic, and she kept walking. They took 2 empty seats across from me, just slightly off-center from the head of the table. She sat next to him, legs crossed, glass of wine already in hand. Like she hadn't just detonated something in the middle of my life. She never introduced him. Didn't need to. People at the table exchanged glances. Her sister Lauren stiffened beside me. Her father stopped mid-chew. Her mother's expression didn't change, but her grip on the wine glass tightened. And Kimberly? She just smiled. The conversation limped along, people trying to pretend it was fine. Normal. But you could feel it. That unspoken weight on the table. Like everyone was pretending not to notice the fire burning right in front of them. Then Kimberly stood up. Glass raised, she tapped a spoon gently against the rim. "I just want to say a few words," she said, her voice clear, casual. "First off, thank you all for coming. 10 years is a big deal, and I know it means a lot to Mark." Her eyes flicked toward me just for a second, "and it means a lot to me too. But tonight I don't want to just celebrate time. I want to celebrate growth." She smiled wider. Justin glanced up at her like a proud stage partner. "I've learned a lot these past few years. About who I am. What I want. What I deserve. And sometimes growth means stepping away from what's comfortable and leaning into what feels right." A hush fell over the table. I felt every word like a blow to the gut, and yet she kept going. It's important to have people in your life who see you. Who hear you. Who make you feel like you again. And I've been lucky to find that. So, thank you, Justin. For everything you've done. For being there. For showing me what it means to really be supported. She raised her glass to him. And the room broke. There wasn't a toast. No polite clinking of glasses. Just stunned silence. I looked around. My mother's fork hovered midair, frozen. Lauren stared at Kimberly like she'd grown a second head. Her father blinked, slowly, as if replaying the speech in his head to make sure he'd heard it right. And me? I didn't say a word. Didn't stand. Didn't shout. I just sat there, hollowed out. Everything made sense now. The phone, the coldness, the perfume, the training seminars. She had been planning this. Maybe not this exactly, but something. A shift. A reveal. And she'd pick tonight, our night, to show it off. I met her eyes as she sat back down. She didn't look ashamed. She looked proud. Like she had just peeled off a costume and finally showed everyone who she really was. And Justin? He didn't say a word. Didn't toast. Didn't even touch her after that. Just stared into his wine, jaw tight. For a moment I wondered if he realized what he'd walked into. But I didn't care. This wasn't about him. It was about her. And it was about me finally seeing what had been in front of me all along. For a moment after Kimberly's toast, nobody moved. It was like everyone was waiting for someone else to break the silence. But nobody did. Her words hung in the air, too heavy to brush away with awkward laughter or forced claps. She sat down, still smiling, sipping her wine as if nothing unusual had just happened, like she hadn't just acknowledged, in the most public, polished way, that she'd replaced her husband with the man beside her. Me. Replaced me. I sat still, unsure of what to do. My heart was beating hard, but the rest of me had gone numb. I don't know what I expected, maybe anger, maybe shouting, but not this. Not her treating our anniversary like her coming-out party with someone else. And then her father stood. Not all at once. Slowly. Like the weight of what he was about to say had to climb up his spine one vertebra at a time. He cleared his throat, but he didn't raise his glass. I wasn't planning on saying anything, he said, looking around the table, voice steady. But I guess tonight's full of surprises. He turned to Kimberly. What you just said, what you just did, that wasn't brave. That wasn't growth. That was cruelty. Kimberly blinked, confused for half a second. Then her smile wavered. You brought a stranger to your anniversary dinner, her dad continued. A dinner we all assumed was to celebrate your marriage. To Mark, the man who's been part of this family for 10 years. Someone coughed down the table. A napkin dropped. I don't know what's been going on behind closed doors. I don't pretend to. But this right here? Publicly humiliating your husband, making a toast to another man while still wearing your wedding ring? That's not how we raised you. Her smile faded completely now. She looked around the table, maybe searching for backup. She didn't find it. Her mom stood up next. But she didn't say anything. She just stood, napkin in hand, and walked away from the table. Straight down the gravel path toward the parked cars. She didn't even look back. And somehow that silence was louder than any shouting would have been. Kimberly's eyes widened. Her glass wobbled in her hand. Then Lauren, her younger sister, leaned in toward me. Quietly, like she was handing me a lifeline. You're not alone, she said. You don't deserve this. I swallowed hard. My throat was burning, like I'd been holding back a scream I didn't even realize was there. I looked up, and for the first time all evening, Justin's eyes met mine. He looked uncomfortable, sick even. His hand, which had been resting so confidently on the table a moment ago, was now gripping the edge like he was trying to stop the world from spinning. He didn't say a word. Didn't defend her. Didn't touch her. Kimberly reached for his hand, but he pulled it away. I think that's when it really hit her. That she'd miscalculated. That in trying to shame me, she had only ended up isolating herself. She cleared her throat. Okay, well, she started, but her voice cracked. I didn't expect this reaction. I just thought. Her dad raised a hand. Not a yell. Just enough to make her stop. You thought what? He asked. That we'd toast the end of your marriage? That we'd celebrate your, whatever this is? He gestured vaguely to Justin. Justin looked away. No one moved. No one clapped. No one raised their glass. The only sound was the faint buzz of the string lights and a cricket somewhere in the grass. It was in that stillness, between the wreckage of what she'd done and the silence of people choosing not to follow her, that something changed in me. I stood up. Not dramatically. Not angrily. Just quietly. Kimberly looked at me, finally looking me in the eyes. She opened her mouth like she was going to say something. But nothing came out. There was nothing left to say. I slid my chair back, nodded once to Lauren, and started walking. No grand speech. No final words. Just my footsteps on the gravel. I left the patio, the lights, the tension. And I didn't look back. The house was dark when I got home. Not pitch black, just that soft, natural dimness that settles in when all the lights are off and the day has ended without anyone noticing. The kind of quiet that feels intentional. Like the walls are holding their breath. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't need to. I knew every inch of this place by memory. I could walk it blindfolded, the 3 floorboards that creak in the hallway, the corner of the couch that always eats remote controls, the kitchen faucet that whistles if you turn it just right. I dropped my keys into the dish near the door. The sound echoed louder than it should have. Then I just stood there for a moment. Motionless. Still in my jacket. Still wearing the shoes I had walked into hell with. I stared at the living room, half expecting something to feel different now, to match the shift in my chest. But it didn't. Everything looked the same. The same framed pictures on the wall. The same throw blanket folded across the back of the couch. The same scented candle on the coffee table, cedarwood and linen. Her favorite. It had burned down low, the wick barely standing. I sank onto the edge of the couch like a man trying to remember how to sit in his own life. I didn't cry. I thought maybe I should. Isn't that what people do when their world implodes? When their marriage dies in front of 30 witnesses under string lights and polite conversation? But I didn't feel rage. Or grief. Not really. Just empty. There's a certain kind of silence that comes after betrayal. Not the explosive kind. Not the crashing of plates or screaming through tears. But the other kind. The colder kind. The kind that seeps into you like fog. It doesn't knock you over. It just dulls everything. After a few minutes, I stood up and went to the bedroom. The door creaked softly as I opened it. She had made the bed that morning. Neatly. Like always. She was methodical about it, pillows arranged a certain way, corners tucked in like she learned it from a hotel tutorial. I used to tease her about that. You know, we're just going to mess it up again tonight, I'd say, smiling. She used to laugh and say, yeah, but it's nice to come back to something peaceful. That word stuck in my head now, peaceful. Because that's exactly what this room no longer was. I walked to the closet and pulled out the suitcase. Black leather, a little scuffed on the sides. I bought it 5 years ago for a conference in Seattle. She tucked a love note inside the front pocket back then. Come home to me, it had said. I wondered if she even remembered that. I set the suitcase on the bed and opened it. I didn't pack with a plan. I didn't have a destination. I just knew I couldn't stay here tonight. Maybe not ever again. I started with the basics, socks, shirts, a couple of pairs of jeans. It felt surreal, like I was moving in slow motion. My hands moved automatically, grabbing things, folding them, placing them inside. But my brain was somewhere else. I passed over the blue button-down I'd ironed that morning. Funny how long ago that felt. A lifetime ago. This morning, I thought I was going to dinner to celebrate a decade of love. This morning, I still thought I was married. Yeah? I couldn't even look at her side of the closet without my stomach twisting. I paused halfway through packing to sit on the bed. The mattress dipped under my weight, and for a second, I felt the familiar softness of where we used to fall asleep pressed together, legs tangled, her head on my shoulder. That version of us felt imaginary now. Like a dream I had once and barely remembered. I looked at her nightstand. The same book had been sitting there for weeks, Tiny Beautiful Things by Cheryl Strayed. She never finished books. Said she liked to stretch them out like good wine. But I'd bet money she hadn't touched it in days. There was a small bottle of lavender oil beside it. Something she'd started using a few months ago. She said it helped her sleep. I wondered if that was before or after Justin. The thought made me feel sick. I zipped the suitcase and stood. I walked back out into the hallway, now lit only by the glow of a street lamp slipping through the front windows. The kitchen looked untouched, like it was holding its breath. I grabbed a glass from the cupboard and filled it with water. My hand trembled slightly. Not from nerves, but from some exhausted, quiet finality in my bones. I didn't want to stay. I didn't want to explain myself. I didn't even want to listen. I just wanted to go. And then headlights. 2 slanted beams cut across the front of the house. Her car. I didn't move. I heard her door close. Then the sound of heels on the walkway. Then the keys in the lock. Then the front door opened. She stepped inside and froze when she saw me standing in the hallway. We stared at each other for one long, brittle moment. Her face was still flushed from the ranch. Her lipstick was smudged, just a little. Her hair was falling out of whatever style she had carefully curled it into. She didn't look like the Kimberly from the photos. She didn't look like the woman I married. She looked like someone who knew the house she had just walked into was no longer hers. Mark, she said quietly. I didn't answer. Her eyes fell to the suitcase beside me. Her mouth opened. You're leaving. I nodded once. Just barely. She stepped forward. Can we talk? Just for a minute. I stayed still. Just watching her. She kept going. Please. I know tonight was. I didn't mean for it to go that way. I just wanted. She stopped herself. I didn't expect everyone to react like that. I almost laughed at that. React like that? As if what she'd done was just a poorly timed speech at Thanksgiving. Not the public burial of our marriage. She looked at me again. Her voice softer now. I didn't want to hurt you. I raised an eyebrow. My first expression in 10 minutes. You think bringing him to our anniversary dinner, to a table full of our family, wasn't meant to hurt? I asked, voice hoarse. She blinked fast, eyes wet now. I thought I was being honest, she whispered. For the first time in a long time. No, I said quietly. You weren't being honest. You were being seen. She flinched. You wanted to be applauded for your bravery. For your transformation. But this wasn't about healing. Or growth. This was about you. Her lips parted. Mark, I shook my head. She took a step closer. I backed toward the door. And she saw it then, the finality. The wall. The place I'd reached inside that wouldn't let her in anymore. You don't have to go tonight, she said softly. But I did. I couldn't explain it, not in words. It was just something I knew. Like the way animals know when storms are coming. Some primal truth in me that refused to sleep in the same bed where she'd once whispered forever and then rewritten the meaning behind my back. So I reached for the suitcase. Rolled it gently toward the door. Hand on the knob. She watched me like a child waiting for a parent to change their mind. I opened the door. The night was cool and still. The sky was that deep, ink-black shade that only shows up after long, painful days. I stepped outside. She didn't follow. I didn't say goodbye. And I didn't look back. The divorce process wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was just draining. Kimberly tried at first, texting, calling, leaving voicemails that swung wildly between guilt and nostalgia. She sent me photos of old vacations, quotes about forgiveness, even a video once of her crying, asking if we could start over. I didn't reply to any of them. I wasn't angry anymore. Just done. I rented a small studio on the other side of town. Nothing fancy. Just a bed, a desk, a little balcony where I could drink coffee in the mornings and remind myself I still existed outside of her. I started running again. Reading more. Sleeping without clenched teeth. For the first time in years, I could breathe. Her family didn't interfere. Not even to ask for my side. I think they already knew. Only Lauren reached out once. A simple text that read, "You did the right thing. If you ever need anything, I'm here." I didn't reply. But I held on to those words. And slowly, I began to understand something. It wasn't just that she cheated. It was that I had spent years shrinking myself to fit a version of love that was always conditional. Now, I was reclaiming the space I'd given up. Piece by piece. Alone, but not broken. A month after the papers were signed, I met someone. Her name was Emily. Not in a rush, not in a whirlwind, just two people walking toward each other slowly. She wasn't a distraction. She wasn't a replacement. She was real, grounded. We talked over coffee about books and music and the kinds of things you forget you care about when your life is falling apart. With Emily, there were no secrets. No masks. She didn't look at me like I was damaged. She looked at me like I was enough. One night, while we were cooking together in my tiny kitchen, her stirring, me chopping, I got an email from Kimberly. Subject line, "I owe you the truth." I didn't open it. Didn't need to. I deleted it and placed my phone face down on the counter. Emily laughed at something on the stove and I turned to her, sliding my arms around her waist. She leaned into me without hesitation. And that's when I knew I wasn't living in the past anymore. I was finally home.